webinar. The featured topic is Get Your Business Out of Your Brain, and we're excited to have Chris Ronzio of Trainual here with us, talking about wonderful ways that you can delegate and train your employees effectively and start putting those standard operating procedures really into effect. So this is a great way to kick off your new year and build a business that has you leading it rather than doing everything at once. So to get started, I just wanted to go over a few housekeeping details, some things to keep in mind as we're going through our webinar here. So if you are experiencing any audio or visual issues during the webinar, first I would recommend making sure that your volume is turned up to the appropriate level. And I would also recommend closing all other programs and windows. If you have any severe issues that you're experiencing, sometimes just logging off and logging back in is all that it takes to reset, and that way you can follow along with our webinar. We are recording this session as well, so this recording is going to be sent out to you after it's done processing. Usually takes about 24 to 48 hours, and we'll follow up with an email, everybody that was not only logged on here, but also those that registered and unfortunately were not able to join us for the live version. So we'll send that out, as well as any way that we can connect you to Chris. So then if you have any follow-up, if you want to utilize his tools or just get connected to him and Trainual a little bit more, then we'll send that out in the follow-up as well. So just to put a face to the name, I am Kendall Jones, Community Outreach Manager with Local First Arizona, and I'll be facilitating this webinar this morning. So one of the things that I would love to get started with, we are going to have this chat at the bottom here active all throughout the webinar. So we're going to have some time at the very end to be able to have some question and answer time with the speaker. But feel free to utilize this chat box here if you have any questions throughout, if you'd like to make any comments. Feel free to utilize this. So I'm going to go ahead and type in a quick hello. And if you want to do me a favor at the very bottom, utilizing this chat box, feel free to type in, you know, where you're calling in from. We love to know where everybody's calling in from. We've got this webinar going all around the state, so feel free to use it. And again, if you have any questions throughout, just put them right on there and we'll either answer them right then or we'll save it for the question and answer time. Fantastic. Okay, and to introduce our wonderful speaker, Chris Ronzio of Trainual, I just have to give a quick plug. So we are using Trainual here at Local First Arizona, and it has honestly been a lifesaver. As you've seen, the growth of our staff has basically doubled in a very short amount of time. And so it's really important to us to be able to utilize Trainual to organize all of those moving parts of our organization at once, to implement some standard operating procedures, and then make sure that we're onboarding everybody appropriately. So we have been ecstatic to be able to have something like this on hand with us. And we're super ecstatic to have Chris here, who's going to talk about the nuts and bolts of how he organizes businesses and how you can utilize those organizations in your business too. To introduce our speaker, Chris, he has built a nationwide video production company that sold over 3 million in youth sporting event videos before he was even 25 years old. In 2013, he founded an operations consulting firm that helps other entrepreneurs scalable systems and processes. Over the last 4 years, the firm, Organized Chaos, has worked with hundreds of companies in dozens of industries and invested in building 6 of those businesses to over 30 million in annual revenue. Now, Chris's third business, Trainual, is an online platform for business owners and employees to document what they do in simple step-by-step processes. Chris and his team are on a mission to systemize 25,000 small businesses through their technology. So I'm very excited to introduce Chris here, and with that, Chris, please take it away.
All right, well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here to kick things off for the year. It's funny not being able to see anyone and connect with you face to face. Please utilize the chat, respond to anything. and I'll type in there throughout as well. So for this presentation, we're going to talk about how to get your business out of your brain, how to build systems and processes and training. When Kendall asked me to do this, I know training isn't the sexiest topic. So for the next 45 minutes, what we're going to do is bring sexy back to training, or at least we're going to try. So hang on with me, and we'll go through all the processes that we use at Trainual to help systematize businesses. If you're not a Justin Timberlake fan, or you don't know what this song is, you probably also don't know that tomorrow is his birthday, and by no coincidence, is the day that my wife has selected to induce our second child. She's a huge fan, and it just happened to work out that way. So I want to bring sexy back to training for the next hour, and then I'm clocking out to go pack for the hospital for for the baby to be born. But while I have a picture of my family up on here, I want to reiterate what Kendall said. My mission is really to help small businesses organize chaos and get things done so they have more time to do what they love. So whether you want to grow your company to 1,000 employees or just have more time on weekdays to play with your kids, the more systematized your business is, the better. And I think we can all agree on that. Thank you, Jennifer, for the congrats. So why build systems? Over the last few years, like was mentioned in the intro, my company, Organized Chaos, has worked with hundreds of different businesses, all different industries, one-on-one, going inside their company to help build their systems and processes, create more time and more efficiency. If you're just getting started with this, I wanted to lead with a few books that I really recommend. So I don't think anyone can argue that a systems-based business is going to be the most successful company. So some topics or some books I really recommend are first, The E-Myth, which is a famous book. Traction is about building the entrepreneurial operating system for your company. Cash Flow Quadrant, how you can be a business owner or an investor instead of just working in the business, and then scaling up on how to really fine tune the systems and processes in your business. So I've always been a systems guy from the time I was a little kid. When I was 14, I started a video production company, my first business, that did amateur sporting events all around the country. We did some of the biggest events, Pop Warner Championships. We did the NFL Pro Bowl halftime show out in Hawaii for 4 years in a row. We were the official videographers for U.S. figure skating, doing all of their coverage up until the Olympics, and synchronized swimming and skating and baseball and all these different sports. And really, it was just a learning experience in how to operate a business remotely around the country, how to grow really fast, hiring about 300 camera operators and setting up 3 offices. And it was a great experience. So when I sold that business in 2013 and started working with other companies, that's when I launched Trainual. So Trainual came about first in 2014. As a business owner going in and out of different businesses, you always hear that, work on your systems or build a playbook for your company, make your business turnkey, create manuals and roles and responsibilities. But I was frustrated that being a consultant and an investor, I couldn't find a great system to do this in the small businesses that I was working with. So we ended up cobbling things together, and we used a variety of tools. We had a WordPress website that was kind of like an intranet for our business. We had laminated checklists. We were sending out, training materials all around the country, and it just wasn't simple. And that's what I wanted when we created Trainual. So that's what Trainual is. I'll talk a little bit more about it at the very end of the presentation. But Trainual is just a simple place where you can document all the processes and policies and roles and responsibilities in your company, where you can delegate them to others and really focus on growing your business. So it sits right in between, just the basic kind of paper manuals or Google Docs and more enterprise training and learning systems. When I first created it, I had a handful of consulting clients, and so they were my beta testers. And what was crazy is the first 5 companies that used Trainual had these amazing results. So maybe you've seen some of these names before, but the first company we put on it sold. The next one merged. The next one tripled their revenue, and the next one went from 3 to 130 employees, and the final one has grown into a recognized brand all around the country. And I thought it must be my expert consulting that was producing these results. But as we looked back, it was really just that all of these companies were putting attention into their systems and processes. And I think any company that focuses on their systems will see similar results. Maybe not these exact ones, but whatever the results you are looking for, they will come through focusing on your systems. So as I tried to find a common thread between these businesses, I came up with a real simple formula. And that's, first, you figure out how to do it. For every process in your company, there is a consistent way that you can do it. And at the beginning, maybe you're not documenting your training or anything because you're still in there figuring it out. And that's fine. But once you've got something that's consistent and you've figured out how to do it, the next step is to document it. And that's to write it down, whether it's just in a simple piece of paper or a checklist or an Evernote doc or a Google doc or Trainual, whatever it is, you've got to write it down somewhere that you can communicate it to someone else. Once you've got it down, you can delegate it. And really that's the simple formula to growing a business. It's you go every role, every process, from the time that you're a solo person wearing 1,000 hats to the time that you're a CEO with 1,000 employees. It's just figuring out how to do it, document it, and delegate it. All right, so for the rest of the presentation, what I want to talk about is these 4 questions up at the top of the screen. So first, if you're even in this webinar, you're thinking about this, which is good. So we'll go through some simple ways to start. If it's a goal for you to systematize your business or work on training, we'll talk about some easy ways to start. The next thing we'll talk about is how to train. So there's a lot of different ways to communicate material to your employees, your interns, your subcontractors. So we'll go through the different ways on how to train. Next, we'll talk a little bit about accountability and why that's so important. And then we'll round out with some information about systems and software and the tools that we recommend businesses use to really do this efficiently and hopefully automate your company. So the first point I want to talk about here on the screen is you hear a lot, whether it's in books or interviews or on TV, about stop working inside your business. Now, stop working in your business and start working on your business. I think that's cliche, and it sounds great, and you would love to stop working in your business, but the reality is you have to keep working in your business until it feels like a job, until whatever role you're playing feels so repeatable and so easy that you want to hand it off to someone else so that you can grow. So it doesn't matter if it's your company or if you're just an employee or a manager in the business. I think everyone is after this personal expansion where you get really good at something and then you want to show someone else how to do it so that you can kind of move a little bit up the chain. And for that, you have to keep working inside your business until you're sick of it. So if you ever hear stop working in your business and start working on your business, you're never going to wake up one day and just say, "Oh, I'm not going to work anymore. I'm done working in the business." It doesn't work that way. So don't be too down on yourself. Keep working in your business until you've figured it out and until you're ready to pass off responsibilities. So that's just the first thing I wanted to start with. Okay, so if you're just going down this path, where could you start? One exercise that we've done with dozens of our clients consulting is to create a future org chart. So when I go into a business, I often ask if they have an existing org chart, and maybe the answer is no to that. And that's just some low-hanging fruit that says, okay, who's at this business, who works here today, what roles or what hats is everyone wearing, and how are we organized, who reports to who. Maybe in a small company, it's just you with a few contractors, or maybe in a larger company, you've got a series of managers. But as you think about growing your business and looking ahead to the next 3 years or the next 5 years, or if you can see this far into the next 10 years, you will have a future org chart. And if you think about yourself, all the half jobs that you're doing right now, you're probably doing several jobs in the company. Very few small businesses and very small percentage of the local first community is an enterprise level where they have a really narrow job focus. So if you're in my shoes with a startup like Trainual is, you probably wear a lot of hats. So start by defining what those hats are and creating a future org chart for yourself, even if your name is in 10 of the boxes. So what I like to do is create a current org chart, one for next year, one for 3 years, and one for 5 years. And that really starts to round out where you think that the business is going and which seats you're going to need to fill as the volume of the business picks up. For me, that's helped us identify who our next hire is and which hats I would like to take off to free up more capacity for myself. Another tip I like to recommend that's not on the slide here, but if you're feeling overwhelmed and you have so much on your plate and you're not sure what to delegate first, you might start by just looking at your calendar. And instead of looking at your calendar forward, look backward and look at what meetings and what events you've had throughout the course of the week. When you get out of a meeting, update your calendar and drag the little bar to the actual minutes that you spent on that, not what you had intended to spend, but the minutes you spent on the activity. And after a few days, you'll start to see this really clear log of time that you can understand where your time is going. And then if it's just trying to peel away your first set of responsibilities to hire your first person, you should have a good idea of which area of your business or which couple areas would really help to free up time for you. So create a future org chart and get a feel for what you're doing with your time so that you can figure out what to delegate. All right. When I was running my video company, it was called EVC, Event Video Company. I went through this process in 2012 where I decided I didn't want to be the president of the company anymore. And to get truly out of the business, that was the last hat I needed to hand off. So over a 6-month period from 2012 to 2013, I trained my director of operations to take over as the president of the company. And what was a 6-month training process to get him into that role started as a 1-hour brainstorming session of just identifying everything that I still did in the business. So again, whatever role you're in your business, or if you're assigning this task to other people, whatever role they're in, start by just listing everything you do. A great framework for this is just to think in terms of a time-bound approach. So what do you do every day? What do you do daily? And in a retail setting, maybe this is opening a store or turning on the lights or checking in employees. So what do you do every day? What do you do weekly? What do you do bi-weekly? Maybe that's payroll or some other filings that you have to do, reports. What do you do monthly? Are there certain stats you're pulling or client reports? What do you do quarterly, like filing quarterly taxes? And then what do you do annually, whether it's some kind of strategic planning for the business or anything that you might do? This is a great framework just to sort of flush out in your brain all the different responsibilities and tasks that are still on your plate, whichever role in the company you're in. So when I did this, I used Evernote, which is just a free online note-taking service. And I made a huge list of the 100 or so things that I still did in the business. Even at that level, as the president of the company, there were so many things on my plate, from all the financial responsibilities and legal responsibilities and hiring and training and I really owned our systems, and having to hand off those different pieces of software and those different roles to my director of operations was a process that took some time, but it started with just listing it out. So that's a really simple place to start. Um, uh, so if you're a paper person and you just like the tactical, being able to write things down, you can download and print these sheets, or you can just send me a message outside of the system. I'm happy to send you a notepad that we had printed. And it's funny, I've gone into companies and seen these sheets just taped everywhere in a business, and that is a great place to start. So just start somewhere, start outlining. Okay, let's move on to how to train. So people learn in different ways. Depending on the size of your company, you might be doing all of your training in person, just one-to-one shadowing or walking someone through the business. And for many businesses, that face-to-face, in-person training is critical, and it's hard to go without that. It would be hard to train a barista at a coffee shop how to pull an espresso just with a paper or an online training system. So there's certain components that will always be in-person training. But the purpose of delegating or documenting your whole system to communicate it, we still having sound issues? I just saw in the chat. Can anyone hear me? Hello? Hello?
I can hear you loud and clear. I would recommend, if you are experiencing any issues, if you just log off and log back in. But Chris, you're coming in loud and clear for us.
Okay, great. Sorry, I just want to make sure I don't lose everyone. So um, there will always be those types of businesses where you want to train in person and show someone how to do something. And documenting your system is not to entirely replace that. The reason you would document your system is to make sure that your training process is consistent. So if you train someone how to make the coffee one day and someone else trains them a different day, there may be some inconsistencies there. So it's great to document your system for the purpose of consistency so that everyone starts with the same foundational knowledge, and then you fill in the gaps in person. One of the companies I mentioned on an earlier slide, Renters Warehouse, a property management company around the country, they do this where they have an in-person orientation to train their new agents on a variety of things. But before the orientation starts, everyone goes through Trainual to start with the same foundational knowledge, and it lets them leapfrog over a lot of things that they might have had to do manually before. But once you get into training, there's a few different ways you can do it. So first is text. You could always just write a text manual. This is how people have done it for ages and generations, but my recommendation with text is to be concise. When someone sits down, they don't want to read an encyclopedia. And there's a famous phrase or saying that if I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter, something like that. I'm probably getting the quote wrong, but it takes more time to be concise than it does to be long-winded. And I think it's important that as you flush out your training material, you take another pass through it and try to make it shorter and more concise. Don't worry about it being too light. People can always ask you questions and you can fill in the gaps, but it being too heavy will inundate someone. So try to be concise. Next, break your topics up into sections. Use bullets, use numbered list. Don't create long paragraphs. So those are just some tips around text. The next, sometimes more efficient than text, or oftentimes, and not just because I had a video production company, is video. So video can come in two varieties or a combination. First, it could be a live recording. It could be you making that coffee. It could be just as simple as an iPhone or Android type of video. I see Roger's logged in from an Android, so I won't exclude the Android family. It could be as simple as just holding up your phone and talking, and what might have taken you 10 pages of text to explain, you can communicate in a few minutes of just talking to your webcam or to your phone. So don't be afraid of video. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be professional. Next is screen recording. So if you're doing anything on a computer, on a software that requires employees or your team to click around and actually complete tasks on their computer, screen recordings are fantastic tools to be able to communicate that. So instead of text that says, first click this green button, you can actually show them. And that's a great way to cut out the gray area. Next is image, of course. Images, same thing, can be live, they can be photos, or they can be screenshots of what's on your desktop. And then files. So files I've seen used as, just dumping a whole folder, a Dropbox folder of material on someone. And I don't think that's the way to do it. I think files in training should be used for examples of what is correct and templates of what is blank to let people see what they should fill out. So sprinkle files into your training, but only to serve as an example or to serve as a template for them to use on an ongoing basis. So those are some tips on how to train. I mentioned a few different tools throughout there. So again, I think we can share these slides after the fact, but these are some great software tools. Most of them are free. I'll talk through them really quickly. Loom is a way in your desktop browser to be able to record your screen with a little circle of your face at the bottom. So it's a nice way to communicate something on your computer. Screencast-O-Matic is a similar tool that is for recording on your desktop, so your whole screen instead of just your browser. Screencastify, another one of those tools. Evernote Sketch is a free tool by Evernote to be able to take screenshots and draw all over them. So if you want to point arrows at things to call attention to something, that's a great tool for that. Droppler is the same thing. YouTube. And Vimeo and Wistia are all video hosting platforms that have free versions. So we use both Vimeo and Wistia at Trainual. Players look nice and they can give you some great information about who's watching your videos. SlideShare was just purchased by LinkedIn. It's a way to share online presentations like this and embed them anywhere, like inside Trainual. SoundCloud hosts audio files, so if you've got an interview or something you want to share, that might be a great way to do that. And then if you're on a Mac, a QuickTime Player, it comes built into your Mac, and it's a default, people don't think of it, but it's an easy way to do screen recordings and recordings of you. All right, let's talk a little about accountability. So again, going back to my video company, a big part of what we did was figure skating. I mentioned we were the official videographers for US figure skating for everything up until the Olympics. So if you don't know much about figure skating, maybe you don't know that in judging, a lot of the skaters' score depends on the side of their blade that they're on, touching the ice with, so their footwork out on the ice. When we first started hiring camera operators across the country, you don't know that by default. So you want to zoom in on their face and get all the expression and what you think they do on NBC. But what we found very quickly is that the judges were not able to score the performances. They took our video, and it is very important to properly train our teams so that they didn't miss out on that. So you don't want to miss what matters. And if you don't explain to your people what matters and test them on what matters, then you might run into problems down the road. I like to say, inspect what you expect. A mentor of mine taught me that. So back in the EVC days with my video company, we used a tool called Wufoo. It's an online survey type tool. There's another one we use now called Typeform. So these are great tools. They have free versions where you can at least start to build little tests or quizzes to send out to your people if you're not using Trainual. Of course, Trainual has that built in. But accountability is crucial, and wanting to hold your people accountable for what they've learned, you should do some kind of test component. So next, in our consulting company, we would go through with a business and interview employees. And one of the things that we saw a lot of is that there was gray area between roles. Someone wasn't sure who was responsible for something else. And if two people are responsible for one thing, then no one is responsible. And really, you have to figure out the buck stops at someone. Maybe there's a backup option if they're out for the day or for the week, but really one person has to be the owner of every task or responsibility in your business. So what we would do is build this really simple matrix where you've got all the tasks or responsibilities as rows and all of the people as columns across the top. And you'd go through and put an X next to the one person that's responsible for each thing. And again, you can put little circles or something for other people that are trained as backup or also do a certain task, but who is the one person that is responsible for quality control and the way that the thing is done and keeping it consistent across all the other people that are doing it. The accountability matrix is a great tool, and it's something that you can just do in Excel if you want to start documenting who does what in your business. If you're trying to move out of your business or move upstream in your business, it's also a great way to figure out what's still left on your plate. And then for every row, you can set a date that you will no longer do that thing, that you'll train someone else. The last reason that accountability matters, we have a client, a Trainual customer up in Denver that is a medical spa. So they do medical procedures and facials and all of that. They actually use Trainual to test their candidates, their applicants, where when someone applies for a job there, they'll get assigned some content inside Trainual. They'll go through the material, they'll take a quiz, and if they don't pass the test or commit and show that they've committed to the process, then they don't make it to the next part of the interview, and they're screened out. So you can actually see the future by holding people accountable during your training. You can see whether they'll be accountable for the goals that you're setting later on in the business for them. So I suggest starting early and holding people accountable from the very beginning. All right, next, the systems. I actually made a book a couple years ago called 100 Hacks to Improve Your Business. So you can Google this. It's on Amazon, there's a Kindle copy, and it's free. If you just end up on my website, you can download it for free. But there are hundreds and hundreds of software tools out there that can make your business easier and simplify your business and help you with certain processes. So it's really difficult sometimes to know where to start. Big part of the reason we were hired as consultants in the beginning was to sort of be personal shoppers for companies that were considering different software tools. So over the years in doing this for hundreds of businesses, it's really come down to 4 different areas that you should have a system in place for your company. So if you're feeling overwhelmed or chaotic, or if you just kind of don't know where to start, think about these 4 areas first. And I'll talk through each of them and have kind of a conversation around this. So first, at the very core of a business, if you have anyone other than just yourself, you have some type of conversation. So if you have no other systems, you have nothing else going on, you have to have a way to chat back and forth with people. Maybe for you, this is email. For us, we use Slack as a chat system in our company. If you're not working at a computer, there's a tool called Voxer. That's kind of like a walkie-talkie that you can use. But it's really important, at least in the early stages of a business, to have an open line of communication with your team. So the first tool you should have is something to control the conversation. Next, when the conversations start to build up and you can't just talk about everything, you graduate to the next system, which is the work. That's a project management system. Linda, the walkie-talkie is called Voxer, V-O-X-E-R. I'll type that into the chat as well. V-O-X-E-R, free tool. I love it. I also use it with my mom. She can send me messages, and it's great because I can respond back in a minute later in the day instead of getting onto a 30-minute phone call because she loves me so much. Okay, so doing the work is the next piece, and that's project management. So maybe you've heard of Basecamp, Asana. Those are popular project management tools. We use Teamwork, and that's my favorite, just because it allows some more flexibility over creating templates of project. If you do the same type of work over and over again, you can create a template to fire off a new version every client you get. Once you have all this work going on, maybe you've developed a pipeline of work and you need to start managing relationships. So you've got to manage the sales and marketing that happens before you're doing work with someone, and you've got to manage the relationship after you've done work with them to try to get them to purchase again. For that, we use HubSpot. HubSpot is a CRM, and they also have marketing and sales tools within it, but the CRM portion is free. So it's a great way to get started in managing relationships. And then finally, the money. By now, the money should be overflowing, and so you need a simple place to not only track what's going out and coming in, but to be able to track your time, to understand profitability on jobs. And for that, we use Harvest. I've used Harvest for about 10 years now, maybe more, and it's a great way to track time, to do job costing, to send invoices, to collect payments online. A really simple system to start as you're getting started. And then maybe you also use something like QuickBooks or Xero or FreshBooks as your business gets more developed. So all of those systems, those top 4 systems are the areas where I would think about starting in your company. And if you have any questions, feel free to type those into chat. I'm happy to answer questions about systems if anyone else. Gary, Harvest, QuickBooks later. So Harvest is not a bookkeeping tool. So for many companies, if you're just getting started, you probably don't need a full-fledged bookkeeping tool until it becomes tax time or you want to really understand your P&L. In that case, you can use Harvest instead of something like QuickBooks, and you can rely on a CPA or something to close out and reconcile your books at the end of the year. As you have more employees and you're interested in looking at a P&L on a regular basis, then you do want to use a bookkeeping tool like QuickBooks or Xero, which is Xero. There's other systems like FreshBooks, or we used Bench.co for a while, which is a combined service and tool. So they have the platform online and also do the work for you. But I like Harvest to complement those tools for invoicing and time tracking, or to replace the tools if you're just getting started. So those are the 4 crucial systems in your business, and then of course Trainual is kind of the underlying system that could be the foundation of the company. Because even though you're doing work in all of those other systems, you're having conversations and managing projects and tracking customers and tracking your money, Trainual would be the one system where you document how to do everything. So how do you do what you do? That's where you would organize it, train it, and kind of have the playbook or the manual. Okay. So a Trainual would just be the underlying systems tool that explains how to use all of your other systems. So that hopefully gives you some context about what Trainual does. I'll talk a little bit more about that, and then we have plenty of time for questions toward the end of this. So as I mentioned through here, what is Trainual? Your entire business documented. So you create the content in all the different ways we talked about, text, video, images, documents. Then you group all of those processes and how-tos into roles in your business. They can be the future roles that you come up with in your future org chart, or they can be your roles that exist today. Then as you invite new users, you just tag them with whatever role in the company they have, and they're automatically assigned everything that they need to know how to do in your business. You can track progress to have full accountability, so people check things off as they've gone through it, and it's recorded in the system. You can test knowledge in little tests, and then everything is searchable. So if you have to jump back in to a position because you forget how to do something, just search the term at the top, and it'll take you right to that step-by-step process. So that's what Trainual is in a nutshell. We have a special offer as well, because you've taken the time to listen to me and hear my story. If you want to get started with Trainual, if this sounds like something that you're interested in, you can pick any plan on our website and just enter the coupon code LOCALFIRSTAZ. You'll get 50% off your first month. The first 14 days are also free, so you can get in there, poke around, and do, see if it's a good tool for you, and then decide if you want to continue, and if so, your next month after that will be half off. Also, as an added bonus that's not on the screen, the first 3 people that want to move on this, of anyone that comes from Local First, I'll do an hour setup session with, where we go through all the roles in your company, get your first few processes loaded in here, and really help set you off on the right foot. So that would be for anyone that's seen this. So with that, I will close out here on just how to get in touch with me, and then I'll answer any questions that you have about software, tools, systems, processes, scaling, simplifying, whatever I can help with. You can find me on Instagram at Chris Ronzio. You'll probably see me posting a selfie from somewhere in this presentation. On Facebook, you can find us at Trainual. I'm also on there too personally. And then the website, trainual.com, like the modern training manual. Again, there's that coupon code, 50% off your first month with code LOCALFIRSTAZ. And at this time, I want to just help out and see what questions you have. Kendall, if you could help me do a poll here, maybe at this point. Let's see.
Sure thing.
I wanted to know, I'm curious from the group, what some of the biggest training problems are. Is it, or maybe you can just type into the chat. Do you have problems with turnover, with retention, with somebody doing things, people doing things inconsistently? What is your biggest training or documentation problem? Because as we're building out Trainual, I mean, this is kind of research for me, but I also want to see if I can add any more tips for the group here.
And could you repeat the question and some possible answers so then they can start typing that in?
Yeah, so a question is just, what is your biggest training problem, or what is the obstacle that's preventing you from focusing on this?
Give everybody a answer there.
Don't all type at once.
Well, I think for us, Chris, here at Local First Arizona, like I said in the beginning, we're moving so quickly, and so it becomes very difficult to make sure that the quality stays up, and you're making sure that people are onboarded correctly, and that you can kind of keep up with everything that's going on all at once, right? So you're either taking more time out of your day to onboard over and over and over again, And so that eats up into time that you could be spending, you know, leading the organization or visioning or brainstorming or something like that. So I think that it's a time issue for us. And it looks like Linda here says consistency. She says, I have a very young workforce. I think the biggest issue is leading slash serving my employees well enough to make them understand they will be most fulfilled in life by being part of something bigger than their own self-interest.
Yeah, absolutely, Linda. So, in a lot of the companies that we've consulted for, when we sit down, we would do these half hour to an hour one-on-one interviews. And especially when we interviewed younger employees at companies, um, the make or break here was whether they felt like the company had things together. Like, when they started working with the company, was it a very clear path to get them started, to show them what's expected of them? Because if they don't know what's expected of them or what goals they're trying to achieve, it might be hard to motivate them because they never know if they're doing things right. They just feel like they're showing up, punching the clock, and using their time. So I think it comes down to setting the expectation for what someone should achieve, giving them an example of what does correct look like, so that things are consistent, and then measuring that and giving them that constant feedback loop to show them that they are doing a good job. And people get motivated when they see that they're making progress and that they are doing a good job on something.
Fantastic. Thanks, Linda, for the answer there. All right. Wonderful.
Yeah, feedback's super important. If you're depending on if you have many employees or not, another great way to do this is just uh, email surveys. You can use some of those tools like I mentioned before to send out anonymous surveys. So you send out a link, you ask a few questions, and you have your employees anonymously fill out some feedback. So giving employees feedback, of course, is cool, and doing it on a regular basis, but also soliciting feedback and showing them that you're open to it, want to change, I think is crucial. So just collecting that feedback all the time.
Awesome. All right. Well, if anybody has any other questions that they'd like to type in, please feel free. This is a good time to do that. And I'm actually just gonna, just out of curiosity, so when you were talking about in the very beginning, outlining the processes and just kind of getting everything out of your brain and onto paper, do you recommend, I mean, going really deep into detail? I mean, you were talking about like turning on the lights and, you know, things like that. How,
Mhm.
like, what should really land on those outline papers to get you started?
So I think when outlining, you don't want to filter yourself. So if it pops into your head, write it down. And it doesn't mean you're going to um, do, fully document how to do all of those things. Some of the simple ones like turning on the lights, you may never document because it's so common sense. But I would say, just the important part is sitting down and just making lists and just think of the term how to do this, how to do this, and go department by department in your business. So like I mentioned early on, you can use a time-based approach where you say, what do I do daily, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly? But then you can also do a department-based approach, which is, what do I do for marketing? What are all the activities I do? Okay, well, we send a newsletter. So how to send our weekly newsletter. There's a topic. Okay, we post on Facebook. So how to create a new post on Facebook. How to respond to people and moderate our social media channels. How to set up a webinar and invite a host to a webinar. These are all things that you can think of if you're focused on a particular department in the business. And then maybe you jump over to finance and you say, okay, how to send invoices or how to put up a registration page with the ticket prices. And within each of those large how-tos, there will be many steps. So the way that we arrange it in Trainual is that you've got a subject, which is like your big topic area, like marketing or like accounting. And then you've got a topic, which would be like how to set up a webinar. And then you would have steps beneath that, which would be like logging into the webinar system. There's a bunch of, processes around that. And then next would be inviting a host to the system, and next would be customizing the intro slides that you do in the introduction, and next would be working in the chat system. So each of these things, if you just sit down and flush your head out, there's hundreds of how-tos in any organization, and you'll see which ones surface to the top based on the pain points. So if a particular thing, like for us actually, we were doing one-on-one demos with Trainual for the last few weeks. We just started doing webinars similar to this, where we could do a one-to-many presentation, because we saw the pain point of, okay, now we're doing demos all day, every day. That's taken up a ton of time. Let's fix that process and create a webinar, and now it's a how to do the Trainual webinar, which we actually have one at 1 o'clock if anyone last minute wants to jump on and see a full demo of the system. But does that help answer the question on how to come up with the how-tos?
Yes, absolutely. I appreciate it. And then how do they find out if they want to jump onto that webinar how to later today? How would they do that?
It's just trainual.com/demo. I just put the link in there.
Perfect. And I can send that out to everybody as well if they want to jump on there.
Great.
Well,
We do
wonderful.
those
Well,
twice a week. So
awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, I am going to wrap this up because we have our wonderful speaker, of course, and probably is itching to end the day so he can go and be with his wife. And so I just wanted to let everybody know what we have coming up next and invite you all to our next member gathering, which is going to be at Taliesin West. This is going to be on the 21st of February, which is a Wednesday, from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. It's the beautiful site in North Scottsdale, Frank Lloyd Wright's desert home, and it's wonderful. We're going to have tours, networking in a really fun space, and you get to see something that is just one of these wonderful Arizona landmarks. And then we also have our next webinar coming up in February. This one's going to be on the 27th, and it's going to be with Quinn Tempest, who is a wonderful marketer, and she is a digital marketer specifically. And so she's going to be talking about the art and strategy behind effective Instagram marketing. So if you want to hone in your skills, or if you're kind of at the very beginning of using Instagram, or you know that you can really build almost like a 201 version and bulk up your followers, Instagram is incredible. This helps businesses get out there. This helps really tell your story. And so treats it like an art form. And so she's going to be talking about how to put all of those pieces together, and that way you can shine on this social media platform. So once again, I would just love to thank you so much, Chris, for your expertise and your time. And I highly recommend getting connected with him for follow-up. If you're interested in Trainual, we will include all of that information. And congratulations again. And I hope that we can do something like this in the future. Maybe, have something almost like a 201 or something in that nature. So thank you so much, Chris. And I hope everybody has a wonderful day.
thanks for having me, and thank you, everyone.